Hi there and welcome. It is so good to have you with me today. It's so great to see some familiar names joining me on the webinar. Liz and Natalie, great to see you, and to see the same familiar kinds of names on Instagram with Shaylee's and Oxford Iridology. So good to see you. Today we are focusing our attention on the topic of what iridology can and can't do, and what iridologists can and can't say. There's a lot of misconceptions about what iridology is capable of, and so much of it is prevalent on social media as people who have some iridology training are relying on outdated information. We've got better information now and it's time to get up to speed. But when those iridologists are using information that is outdated, it gives us all a bad name. We need to remember that the iridology research is ongoing and we need to keep up with it. The next start date, I'm just going to do a little commercial here at the very beginning for about a minute or two. The next start date for my live online taught by webinar class is October 7th. And if you'd like more information, you can visit iridology.education/course-info. But in a moment, I'm also going to give you a link to an information webinar that's coming up. This upcoming course is one that will prepare you for certification with the International Iridology Practitioners Association if you so choose. So if you know already that you want this course, if you've been following me for a while, hang on and I will make sure you get the information, but you can get the information to register right here as well at iridology.education/course-info. If you're new to me or you're just starting to look for an iridology course, please join me on September 23rd at 5 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. We're going to have an info session where I'll introduce the course to you, who it's for, who will benefit the most, how this will benefit your clients if you've got this training. And for those of you who are joining me on the webinar right now, I am posting the link to register for this webinar in the comments. So you can use that to go ahead and get registered. If you're on Instagram with me right now, send me a DM and I will be happy to forward you the registration link for the info webinar. I'm inviting you to join me for this webinar to learn how iridology can benefit you and your clients. It is so important to get an iridology course that teaches you not just how to recognize the markers, but what to do with them, how to combine the markers, how to combine what you see with your client's symptoms in order to ask the right questions, in order to make the right suggestions for your client. Here's a little 10-second synopsis of what the course that starts on October 7th entails. This is the only live, online, fully mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, and naturopaths who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care. What I see happening an awful lot with holistic practitioners is they see the client, then they send the client away, and then the practitioner goes and spends 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 hours creating the program for the client. And sometimes the client doesn't even come back to get that. So the purpose of this iridology course is to teach you how to actually create your client programs while you're with your client, to eliminate that unpaid homework. Doing this will assure you of a couple of things. It will keep you from overwhelming your clients with too much information. It will help you to create clients that will actually increase your client's ability. No, it will help you to create programs that will actually help you to increase your client's ability to stick to your recommendations. That will help your clients to have better success, and it will create long-term retention. When your clients can stick to your programs and get results, they will keep coming back. They want what you've got. If your clients can't stick to your programs, they're not coming back because you give too much homework and they feel like a failure. So if you want to learn more than just iris markers, if you want to learn how the iris markers play off each other, how they change the interpretation, if you want to actually be mentored in how to create programs for your clients. If you want long-term support and mentoring after the program is done, then you want to join me for the info webinar on September 23rd at 5 p.m. to learn about this course. Again, I've posted that link in the comments. And if you're a herbalist, a nutritionist, a naturopath, you want to join me for that. Let's look at some iris slides, shall we, and see how we are going to use this information. This iris in particular shows a very resilient fiber pattern overall. There are some slight indications of inherent predispositions to a reduced resilience in the digestion and in the surface elimination, circulation, and detoxification through the skin. But the fiber structure in this eye is actually pretty nice. It's predominantly straight, it's fairly fine, we've got a high thread count per square inch. What that means is that this client overall has good resiliency. Now, if you have any iridology training, you may be looking at this and talking about, oh, the weak digestion and this person has so much acid in their system. And that's not an absolute truth, neither of those things, because when we see things in an eye, we have to then understand what is the client doing for their health now, and what was the family history behind this, because what we see in an iris gives us 3 to 4 generations back of information. So we need to always ask, is there a personal or family history of the problem? We also need to be aware that sometimes the client's symptoms don't match what their eyes show, because the eyes are inherent and the symptoms are what is going on. And the client may be doing things that undermine the functioning of their body and thereby are producing symptoms. Let's compare it to a Rolls Royce. A Rolls Royce is a nice car. They're engineered well, they're designed to last, and if you take good care of them, they last a very, very long time. If you don't take care of them, however, you can drive them into the ground. You can destroy them. A car of lesser quality, however, if it's had proper care taken of it, can last a very, very long time. This is true of people. Just because you were born or your client was born with a strong resilience doesn't mean they're going to last forever. It means that their body will try to stay well. And if it's given the right materials, it will stay well for a much longer time. If you have a client whose eyes show a less resilient structure, they're more predisposed to having some issues. But if that client is properly nourished, given the right supplements, taught the right lifestyle, they too may experience very good health for a very long time. So we need to be aware that what we see in the eye is the genetic potential. What the client is doing with it is what will determine their symptoms. Someone like this does have less inherent resiliency in many, many ways, but because this person may have learned at a very young age that if they didn't get enough sleep, if they ate certain foods, if they didn't take care of their body, they felt lousy. They may have learned how to take care of their body very well, and they may have no really obvious symptoms at this stage of the game because they are doing what they can to help their body function at the top of its ability. When a client comes in with symptoms that don't match their irides, it's because they've earned those symptoms. While iridology is the blueprint of the body's inherent patterns, it does not account for abuse that is dished out to the body. It might not even be abuse that is as obvious as smoking. It may be something like skimping on sleep or having a sedentary lifestyle. Iridology informs us as to the very best ways to care for the body. What are the food choices? What are the lifestyle things? What are the supplements? And when we understand the inherent tendencies and patterns in we understand more what to do. Now, I strongly believe that in order for us to truly help people with iridology, we need to have other modalities. We need to have nutrition or herbology or homeopathy or something, because we need to be able to give our clients information that will help them to regain their health. Trying to do iridology without having supporting modalities to coach and to recommend our clients with is like taking your car to the mechanic. The mechanic goes, yep, I know exactly what's causing that problem, but no, I don't know how to fix it. You have to take it down to Jim down the street. He knows how to fix these things. How useful is that? Giving your client a long list of markers that you see in their eyes with possible imbalances that could be happening from that, and not being able to give them information, or worse yet, giving them a solution for every little marking you see in their eye, is pretty useless, and it's overwhelming, and it's not going to help your client one little bit. Your client's not going to know where to start. They'll pick and choose the one or two things that they think they can manage. But because those one or two things may not be starting in the right place, they're not going to get the results they should. You know that, right? You know that with your training in nutrition or herbology, that there is a logical sequence. There is a root to every problem. And starting with something that's not actually a problem, or starting in the wrong place in their program, means you're not hitting the root, means you're not going to get long-lasting results. Iridologists cannot diagnose disease. This is speaking of the cans and cans. We can't diagnose disease. We can't diagnose diabetes or heart disease or psoriasis or anything. We cannot diagnose. We may see indicators in an iris that makes us suspect that there's a disease process going on, but we cannot pronounce the diagnosis. Even as a medical doctor, I would suggest, if you are a medical doctor, that you never use iridology to diagnose, that you use it to add to your assessment protocol, to add information to what you've got about the client so that you can make a more accurate diagnosis. What iridology does is it teaches us the questions to ask. Again, when we take the client's symptoms and look at their eyes and assess their eyes in light of their symptoms, we then begin to understand why the client has those symptoms. And when we understand why they have the symptoms, we can then trace back to the root of the problem and make sound recommendations. We would want to then ask questions. Is there a personal or family history of, for example, diabetes or heart disease or skin issues, right? We want to ask those questions. And even if the client says, I have diabetes, we cannot then turn around and say, well, you've got diabetes, so we need to do this, because that would be prescribing, right? I do, when a client comes in with a medical diagnosis, I do write it in their file, and I'll put Dr. So-and-so. I'll name the doctor that gave the diagnosis, diagnosed, name of disease, right? That way I've got that information. I know what the doctor has said, and I can work with that and work around it. But I'm never going to say, I am going to treat your diabetes. That is not my job. I can ask, have you seen a doctor? Have you had nutritional counseling? What are the recommendations? Were there medications prescribed? I can gather that information, and then, knowing what I know about the body, I can talk about, these are things we need to do to help your body manage its carbohydrate metabolism more efficiently. I haven't called it diabetes at all. Because I'm a herbalist, I can also teach about herbs. Do you hear what I'm doing? I'm describing the problem. I'm not naming the disease. And then I'm teaching about health promoting solutions, but I'm not saying they are a cure. This is so important. We can also share studies. If you've got research studies that talk about nutrition or herbs to work with certain imbalances, share those as well. But it's a real disservice for us to do any of this on social media. When I see these sites where people post their iris photos and someone of unknown credentials is listing every marking they see, everything that means, and long lists of things these clients can do, it is of no help to your client whatsoever. This is so important. In my 40 years of training and experience, I have never seen a client who could handle that much information and use it effectively. Instead, they get discouraged and overwhelmed. Let's take a look at these photos that are on the screen right now. These are the eyes, actually, of my husband. Some were done at age 42, some were done at age 65. Now, what you're going to notice here is a couple of very significant things. Some of you might say, look at this. Oh, wow, these fibers are so much straighter. This image on the right is so much bluer. This person has done so much cleansing. Good work. And I'm saying, nope, not quite. We changed the type of camera, which changed the type of light, which changed the pupil size. I want you to think for a moment that, and to recognize that as the pupil gets smaller, these fibers get stretched longer, right? That's going to make them straighter. Now, when we look at the pigment over here, and you go, yes, but the pigment is lighter, but the lighting is different. The lighting is brighter, which washes out pigment. The fact that the pigment here in the image on the left is actually condensed into a smaller space makes it look thicker and more dense. In the image on the right, where the fibers are stretched out, it's going to stretch out that pigment as well, which is going to make it look a little lighter, a little sparser. I'm going to date myself here. It's kind of like pantyhose. Do you know what pantyhose are? If you're old enough to know that, good for you. Pantyhose in the package always look very opaque. They look very solid colored. But when you put them on and they stretch out, they look very sheer. That's exactly what we're looking at here. And so as we look at this, what I really want to focus on is the fact that this pigment has accumulated in the iris. We haven't had pigment disperse. Pigment does not disperse. You can't cleanse pigment out of the eye. But we've got this pigment down here that has accumulated. Let me give you a bit of history on this man. Again, my husband, I know him very well. We've been married for 40 years. And so what we know is some people would say this is an accumulation of using medications or sulfur toxicity. This man has had antibiotics once in his life, about 25 years ago. It predated this, but this pigment has always been there. And the medication was erythromycin. It was not a sulfur-based drug. It was not a sulfa drug. There's been no sulfur exposure. This is not sulfur toxicity. This is genetic predisposition showing up in his eyes, telling us which organ wants to be out of balance and which other organs that imbalance is going to affect. Okay. When we look at this that has accumulated over the ensuing 23 years, it teaches us, again, this is a genetically triggered pigment deposition, and it tells us, it teaches us that his liver, as he gets older, is going to need support. It doesn't tell us his liver is toxic. It simply says his liver is going to need support and which organs are likely to be stressed because the liver is out of balance. That's what it teaches us. We're not going to cleanse this out of him. This man has done cleanses. He's done like the entire master cleanse for the full 2 weeks with the full week of coming off it, right? The lemon juice, cayenne pepper, maple syrup thing. His eyes did not change one bit, right? He uses supplements on a regular basis. He's got a very clean diet and a very clean lifestyle. And so but his eyes have not changed because of that. So it's really important that we recognize that we cannot diagnose, we cannot prescribe, we cannot name disease. Let's do a little case study here. This is one of my clients. These are pictures that were taken when she was 44 years of age. She's 5 foot 10 inches tall, and she weighed 200 pounds when we took these pictures, and she was gaining weight. She was not happy about that. Her joints were aching. She found that she had depression that was worse in the wintertime. Here in Canada, we have something called seasonal affective disorder, which means we don't get enough sunshine in the wintertime, and it tends to lead to depression. And she was having painful menstrual periods. When we look at her eyes, we see an inherent predisposition towards connective tissue weakness. What does that mean? It means she's more likely to have issues like arthritis or strains and sprains. We see a central heterochromia that is of a pigment color that suggests that the liver wants to be out of balance inherently. Now, in traditional Chinese medicine, the liver teaches us that, we recognize that depression is seated in liver. We also know that liver balances hormones. That could be why her periods are being painful. Also in this central heterochromia, we see a little bit of dirty yellow at the edge of it. Now, dirty yellow teaches us that there is an inherent kidney predisposition. She also has a shoe lacuna, which also teaches us that there is an inherent predisposition towards kidney imbalance. Now, when we put all these kidney things together and we understand that the kidneys balance our acid, that in traditional Chinese medicine, the kidneys regulate the joints, it makes sense, right? So we probably want to do something to help our kidneys a little bit. Weight gain is always inflammation based. So we always need to look at the diet and why is there inflammation in the body, because that will always trigger weight gain. So I asked her about her digestion, and she said she has no symptoms, but her eyes tell me that there's an inherent challenge with the elimination in some way. So when I asked her about, tell me about your poop, she said that her bowel movements come out as rabbit pellets. I asked her then about coffee consumption, because this is all adding up to the fact that we maybe have some liver abuse going on. And she said, yeah, she drinks 3 to 4 cups of coffee a day. Now, regardless of what anybody says, I'm here to tell you that there is not enough antioxidant in coffee to make it a good thing. And as such, I mean, we know that coffee is hard on the thyroid, on the liver, on the stomach lining, on the adrenals, and that it increases acid and that increases inflammation. So in our first appointment, and this was as deep as I went with her as iris assessment in that first appointment, I could have nitpicked on every one of these little things, but they were not going to actually give me information that was going to be helpful or useful in addressing her issues of weight gain, joint issues, depression, and painful periods. So in the first appointment, I suggested that we needed to eliminate the coffee, and I explained how it's hard on the liver, how it's hard, it elevates the acid levels, and that is the acid and the liver are key in all of her symptoms. I suggested that for her joints, we might want to use the Nature Sunshine Collagen Supplement and the Nature Sunshine Digestive Enzymes, and get her eating a lot more leafy greens. When she came back a month later in her second appointment, she said she had done everything. I was so proud of her. Her joints were about 50% better, which is significant in only 4 weeks. And for doing just a couple of small changes, her periods were improving. The depression was a little bit better. So then we needed to go further, right? We're building this one step at a time. I asked her about her water intake, and she said she drinks about 3 glasses a day. And I also asked her about her sleep, and she said that it's kind of broken, it's not great. Well, traditional Chinese medicine says insomnia or broken sleep comes out of the liver. Ta-da, another liver symptom. So I suggested that we maybe needed to get some good protein at every meal, and that I would prefer that a lot of it be vegan sourced, because we don't want to boost her acid too high, but we need the protein for the joints. I had asked her to speak with her doctor about getting a prescription for an SAD lamp to help her with her winter depression, to help her have more energy. And I suggested that a 30-minute walk every day, preferably in the middle of the day when the sun is the brightest, and just at a gentle pace to start with would be good. And that she should increase her water to 6 glasses a day. So all we've added to her program was really getting protein at every meal, increasing her water, going for a walk, and getting an SAD lamp. Brilliant. A month later, when she came back, she said she had been to her doctor, he'd given her the prescription for the lamp, she was sitting under it for 30 minutes a day, and wow, it was better than coffee. It was really doing good things for her energy and her mental health and her mental clarity. She absolutely loved it. She was doing pretty good with her water, not hitting 6 glasses every day, but definitely improved. And she was doing better with her proteins, still not doing 100% on that, but she was really struggling to get her walks in every day. So rather than adding more homework to her, I congratulated her for the progress she'd made and suggested we needed to sit with these last changes for another month to get them to be really, really good habits for her. And she was happy with that, because she was continuing to see improvement, and she realized that she needed to do a little bit better on these last recommendations. So do you see how that worked? I didn't diagnose anything. I didn't give her a prescription for things that were medical. I sent her back to her doctor. Why did she need a prescription for the SAD lamp? You can buy those over the counter. They're at any medical supply house here in Alberta. But if she had the prescription, she could write it off on her taxes as a health deduction. So that's important for many people to get that, to save that little bit of tax money. So it was a very simple process. And I was able to do the assessment, the intake, the assessment, the program recommendations on her first, second, and third appointments, all within the allotted appointment time. There was no extra homework time. And I was able to create programs that created massive success for her. She continues to be a client to this day. While these photos were done just a few years ago, she's actually been a client of mine for 23 years. Now, when you do iridology properly, when you create your programs properly, your clients become long-term. This increases long-term retention beautifully. That's not to say that I see her every month, every year, but it is to say that I'll see her 4 or 5 months in a row. Then she'll go off because she's feeling really good. She'll do her own thing. Then 3 or 4 years later, when her body is changing, she'll come back to get her program tweaked again, and we'll do 3 or 4 or 5 sessions, get her back on track for where her body is now, send her off. And I love that my clients keep coming back. Do you see how that works? It's nice, isn't it? Really great. So what we need to remember, what I want you to take away from this today, is that iridologists cannot diagnose. They cannot prescribe. Too many iridologists are doing that. It gives us all a bad name, and it's wrong. It's just flat out wrong. We are not medical doctors. We should not pretend to be. The safest way to practice iridology and to be of the best service to your clients is to study and use constitutional iridology as a guide to assess your client's irides. And we want to temper what we see in the eyes with what the client's symptoms are and with the conversation we have with our clients. And from there, we want to make our health promoting suggestions. Thank you so much for being with me today. I hope you will join me for the next info session for the next course. Just watch in the comments for this webinar to see the registration link. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye.